Hey everyone, so in this video we're going to be implementing the final implementation of our list view widget. So this list view is now going to show an image and text at the bottom, and we're going to go over what the stack widget is and what that does. And we're also going to reuse widgets and see how we can simplify our code by reusing widgets by updating the detail screen to use the same widget that's used in this screen. So let's get started. We're going to be doing a lot of coding, but it's going to be pretty straightforward, and you're going to get a good idea of how we organize our code further. So let's start by opening the app widget here. So this is our main app. It defines the routes of our app. Nothing much to see here. The location screen, this is what we're going to have to implement. And the location screen just shows, as you can see on the right here, a very dry list of just text widgets. So we're going to have to build this out. And I'm going to kind of like go over a few things here. One is the list view widget here is the traditional way of calling the list view widget is, and I have this highlighted here. Let me make the text a bit bigger for you. There's a children parameter, and the problem with that is that when you have hundreds of locations or hundreds of things you want to load, that could be very memory intensive. It's not very practical because when you pass children here and something to children, it will render all of those children. And again, if it's a lot of items, it's not going to be very efficient. So what we want to do is only render the children that we are showing on the screen. And as the user scrolls on the screen, it's going to load more of those children on the screen. So it's reusing widgets basically. And that's how, if you come from the iOS world, that's how, let's say, a table view controller works. And probably the same on Android. So what we're going to use is a named constructor called ListViewBuilder. And if you click into it, ListViewBuilder explains that it creates a scrollable list of widgets as we normally have, but it's good for a large number of children. So we provide an item count parameter and an item builder parameter. So you can read about this more when you click into this if you want. So we need to now say item count. So that's one parameter. And so we already have a reference to locations. We're going to just say locations.length. And the next thing is item builder. And item builder is a actual anonymous function. We're going to pass in a function to this, and we're going to say context and index. And we know that it's context and index because if I click on item builder, this parameter is of type indexed widget builder. So if I click on indexed widget builder, we see the kind of method that we have to implement. It's going to take in two parameters, context and index. It's going to provide us those two parameters, and it's going to return a widget for each item that it's going to render. So we have context and index already available to us here. And then I'm going to implement a custom function that's going to be a private function called item builder. And we're going to pass in our context index. But also, we're going to just pass in that for now. And let's copy this children here. We're just going to take this whole blob here and nix this here and go down and implement our item builder. So it's going to return a widget, and it's going to take a build context and index and location. Actually, I don't want this here. I can simplify that. And we're going to first fetch our location. So what I forgot to add here is the actual reference to our location. So we're going to need index and a location. So you're going to see why in a sec, but we need to pass in an instance of a location here. And I think that's just simpler. Great. So what we're going to do is going to paste in what we have here already. So let's see here. We're going to just return our gesture detector. So for each item, the root widget that we're going to return is the actual gesture detector. So let's do this. and we can remove to list. We don't need that any longer because it's just for each item returning a single widget. We don't need to convert it to a list for any longer. So let's see if that works. So the hot reload, let's see, fired, and cool, we can still click on it. Great. So let me explain why we need these parameters. So for index, we actually we don't need index. I made a mistake. We could just say context and location. There we go. Sorry about that. Now let's discuss how we're going to implement the rendering of this. So for the rendering of this, we need to show an image, and then we need to show some text above it. So let's first cover the image, right? Now we already have an image, a widget to show an image, and it's to show it for a specific height. And we implemented this already in our location detail screen here, and it's called an image banner. We did this in a previous lesson. Image banner takes an asset path, and it already has a static height of 200. So we want to use a consistent height here in the location detail screen and the listing screen here. And it's a little contrived, but it's just an example of reusing widgets. We could pass in a custom height if we wanted to. It also has basically just shows a simple image. So let's reuse this image banner widget. So I'm going to take an example from our location detail screen and just copy this and then go back to our location screen here. And what we're going to do is return not text yet. We're going to turn an image banner. And let's get that to work. Let's just see if that works. We're going to import it here. So let me paste this in. What I have off screen on my notes. And widgets, cool. What's wrong with this? Right, so the thing is that this image banner is going to be shared by the location detail screen and the location screen. So we want this, we don't want it living in the location detail directory here where I'm floating over. So what I'm going to do is create a new subdirectory here on lib called widgets. And widgets is all the shared widgets shared by at least like 2 or more screens. So I'm going to go back to my location detail directory, and I'm just going to like drag that into the widgets directory here. And I'm going to make sure it has no build errors. Cool. Going to update my location detail screen to cite that widgets. Cool. That looks good. No errors. And then I'm going to update this, and boom, we got that. So we have 3 images showing here, and they're of height 200 each, and that's it. So let's continue on. So next we're going to have to implement some text, and the text is it's contained in a container with kind of like a semi-opaque container. So we're going to cover that. And the text container here that contains 3 text labels will be at the bottom of every list item. So we're gonna cover that using layout concepts that we know. But the other thing it's going to do is it's going to float over the image, and to have 2 widgets stack on top of each other, we can use a special widget called the stack widget, because it's again, like navigation, it's like a stack of cards, right? There's widgets that are on top of each other, and you can specify the order of those widgets. So I want this text container widget here to be on top of the image. So let's implement that now. So going back to the location screen, we're gonna now, for our item builder, instead of returning basically like the child as the container and the child as an image banner, the child here is going to be a stack widget. And a stack widget has children. And the order of that is that whatever's there first is at the bottom, and whatever's last is at the top. So at the very bottom of my stack is going to be my image banner. Now, I probably want to tweak this, the height of it, but I'll do that in a sec. Let's go back here. Sorry about that. Locations. Okay, cool. So we have our image banner, and also we're gonna have a new widget here. And what's the best terminology for this overlay? So this is a semi-opaque overlay. We're gonna call it a tile overlay because I think of this like bit of kind of list item here is a tile. To me, that's a tile, and you can name it whatever you want, but that's what I'm gonna name it for now. And I'm going to just say tile overlay, and now we're going to implement the this widget in a second. So tile overlay, and then tile overlay is going to use a number of fields of location. So I'm just going to pass in the entire location because it's not really a big object, so it's not a big deal if I do that. So now we're going to implement tile overlay. Let me make sure I end this children of my stack here. So square brace here, and then end container here, and then end gesture detector. Great. Cool. Now let's implement tile overlay. So this tile overlay is going to be only used by our location screen. So I'm going to create a new file in the location screen, tile overlay .dart, and it's going to be pretty simple. Let me paste in the beginning of it because I want to save some time here. So it's going to be called tile overlay, and what we're going to do is it's going to use another widget that we've already created, and that is a location tile widget here. And what we want to do is, let's see, location tile, one sec. Widgets, location tile. So we haven't implemented this location tile widget yet, and we'll do so in a second. So I'm going to comment this out, and let's talk about how we're going to render this. So to render this, we're going to use layout construct that we've already learned called column, because the reason why it's a column is because we have 3 text fields and they're displayed from top to bottom in a single column. So that's why we're going to use that. So we're going to say return column, and it's going to say main axis, cross axis, end, and stretch, because the main axis alignment we're going to put at the bottom. So the main axis is we're going to make sure that the text is all the way to the right, and each item in the column is stretched. Okay, so that's that. And then the children will be here. And then we're gonna say, I'm just gonna paste in this. We're gonna have some padding and decoration for the children. So we're gonna just have some vertical padding here. And basically we're using edge insets. We've used this already, but there's a name constructor called symmetric. And what that does, it lets us provide the horizontal and or the vertical padding of something. So that's how you define some vertical or and or horizontal padding. We're going to have decoration, box decoration, and we're going to not only going to make it a black background, we're going to have an opacity of 50%. And opacity is how transparent this black box is here. So we can just say, normally we just say color is black, and that would be fine. But if we say with opacity and we pass in a double value, which is a percentage, and we're going to pass in anything between 0 and 1, so 0.5, it'll be a opacity of 50%. And then the child is going to be a kind of like the label for our location. And because we're going to reuse the same tile in another screen later in the lesson, we're going to reuse it here. I'm going to create a standalone widget for that. So to summarize, this location like tile widget is going to have the name of the location and some kind of information about when it opens and some other subtile. But in our location list screen, it's going to show that same information. So this is an example of what we're going to do is share the same widget. These 3 text fields and these 3 text fields. It's going to be the same. So let's go ahead and implement this custom widget. I'm going to go to my widgets directory here, and I'm going to create a new file called location tile. And basically, it's going to be a very simple column, a widget with a column format with 3 text fields. Now, I'm going to paste this in because I don't want to spend too much time like spending time on the details, because there's already concepts that we've learned here, but I'm going to talk through a little bit about it. And before I do that, I'm going to update our fixture data, because the thing is that in our location model here, we have only 3 basic fields: name, image path, and facts. But the requirement is to show the date and time and the type of package that the location is for. So rather than kind of like manually hard code this in, I'm going to paste that in. So so for the location screen, I have this in my notes to the side here. I'm going to create 2 fields, and both of them, one is a user itinerary summary, because the location can have a itinerary for that user, and the second one is the tour package name. So this is our standard package. So that's going to be like the default value for this. It's just standard package or like premium package, whatever. I'm then going to update our constructor. So I'm going to paste in the update to this constructor. Now, I'm using line breaks here for each constructor parameter because if it gets too long, it goes too far off the screen. So it's good when something like this gets too long is to just use line breaks for each parameter. And now I'm going to paste in the list of locations. And if you want to just get the code for this, you can check out from the repo link that you have already, and you can find that link in the show notes, is the branch step/step 07. So I'm going to paste this in here. And basically all I'm pasting in here, oh, that's an error because I haven't implemented it fully yet. Basically what I'm pasting in here is just all the new fixture data. So the user itinerary summary, the date and time it's at, and what tour package name it has. So we have all this nice data that we can use now. So I'm going to go back here. And the next thing I'm going to do is walk through some of the logic for this, because it's really interesting. I'm going to have my location tile widget is going to have 2 parameters. One is a location, and 2 is an optional parameter here that has a default value, and that value is a Boolean value dark theme. So the reason why I have the ability to customize this parameter dark theme is because when the text is here, it has to be white, red, and then gray. But if I want to reuse this widget in another place, in the default place where there's a white background, it's going to be black text, red, and then gray. So I can control the text color of this and what theme I want by basically implementing my own theme parameter here. So I can say, is this a dark theme or not? By default, it's going to be no, it's not a dark theme. So this is something that's optional. And the reason why it's optional is because I have this in curly braces. So if the parameters here are in curly braces, it means it's an optional parameter. So if I have a dark theme, I know that I can decide what text color I want from my main title. Now, we have some errors here in terms of like light and dark and all that stuff, and that's because we haven't implemented that yet. So I'm going to open my style.dart file, and right now it has some basic style, and what I'm going to do is paste in the new style that I'm going to use, and I'm going to paste it in here because it's very verbose and I don't want to have to manually tediously code it with you. But basically the gist of it is that my style file will include some common things. So the text size as constant. So I have a large, medium, small text size, and it's important to always refer to these by the constant names. It's going to have a default font name. It's going to have constants that are the text color, the main text colors of my app. So dark, light, accent, and faint. And I name these, this is how I name them. This is my name for them. And because they're title case of the variables because they're constants, and that's a Dart construct where if you have a constant variable, it's in title case. And in this one, for the faint color, it's gray. And I use a special named constructor called from RGBO, so red, green, blue, opacity. And so the values there are from 0 to 255, and that's how I get this gray. So I say 125 for all of the RGB values. And then I've added some additional text styles. So I now have a title text style, subtitle text style, a caption text style, and this body one that we've had already. Now, the reason why I'm defining them here is I can reuse them in other places in the app. But since I'm using theming in Flutter already, and this again is something we've already gone over, I can also define use these text styles as additional themes in my app. I can say like caption and this style, whatever. I'm not going to do that quite yet. Actually, do I want to do that? I guess I'll do it now. Let me just paste in what I want to implement next here. So with these text themes, I can refer to these text styles easily in the app. So I now not only have a title and a body, I have title and a subtitle and a caption and a body. And now I can refer to these themes by name. And so that's really a nice way to consolidate your style in your Flutter app by leveraging text theme and defining the different types of text themes. And if I click on one, I can see the different styles that it uses. Great. So let's go back to our location tile and just talk through this. Now that I've defined my styles and my themes, it's not erroring out anymore. So if it's a dark theme for my location tile, I have either light or dark text color, and I define a column widget with three labels. Okay, so one is the location name. And what's cool here is I'm saying to uppercase. So this is a special method on string. And what that does is it lets me show all capital letters. So I don't have to hard code it into my fixture data. That's really cool. Also overflow. So that's another property that we haven't covered in Flutter. And that's just basically determining if the text overflows to the max width of the size of the label, it's just going to show whatever you want. And in this case, we show an ellipsis. An ellipsis is just ... Max lines 1, so don't, if there's multiple lines, just don't show multiple lines, just show one line. And then I define my style. And this is the cool part where I can use this theme widget that we've already gone over before, but again, I can say theme of, and then I pass in my context, and then I can refer to different text themes. So I can refer to my title text theme, subtitle text theme, and caption text theme. Now, the reason why you see this weird looking method here, copy with, is because if I want to return this style of my text, I need to kind of copy it, and I don't want to refer to the actual instance. And I believe that's just because I'm using a constant and all that stuff, but basically the compiler was complaining that I can't just refer to it directly. So copy with, what that does is it takes the value of this variable here, so title, subtitle, or caption, and it just copies it in memory. That's all it does. And it's basically it's a function on the text style widget here. And what's cool about that is that I can customize copy with by saying what customizations I want to make when I want to copy it. So if I'm using the title text theme, and the title text theme in my style.dart is having the color dark by default, text color dark. And again, that's defined here. It's black. If it's black by default, I can customize it with another color I want. I can customize it with any other color I want. So I can say, I'm going to either use the light or the dark text color when I copy it. And then I'm going to assign it to style, the style of my text widget. So I do the same thing like this for the subtitle and the caption here. So these are three labels here, and this is what we get from those 3 labels. We get this, and we get this here. It's going to show up like this. So let's update our code to use this now. So now that we have our location tile, I'm going to go to my tile overlay file, and now I can use it. So I can say location tile, and then I pass in a location and a dark theme, true, because it's going to have a black background. What else? Oops, I forgot to say container, and like that. And then I have to import location tile, so enabled that. And then finish this children here, and that's it. Cool, done. I've saved it. It's automatically formatted. And let's see what else we want to do here. Okay, so we have our tile overlay. Let's go back to locations. Let's import our tile overlay. Let's just update all of this here. Tile overlay is imported. Cool. Now let me just, I've covered this in the past before, but let me just touch on it again. The automatic formatter in Dart, it will, if you don't have commas there, it's just going to kind of let you do something like this, where the ending square bracket or parentheses is just on one line. Now that doesn't look as good. It doesn't look as readable. So what we want to do is add in commas so that it just looks a little more readable. So when I have a line break here, and then I indent this, and I use a comma, and then I do this. If I add a comma after the square bracket, and then a line break, and then I add another comma here, line break, and then another comma here, line break, if I save it, it's going to nicely show every ending one of these on a new line. And that way I get this nice comment in Visual Studio Code to show what component is ending. So this parentheses is finishing and ending the stack widget. This is ending the container widget. This is ending the gesture detector widget. So that's really cool, and it just makes your code a lot more readable. So definitely go ahead and use that. So now that we have this implemented, let's reload and see if it worked. Oh, cool, it worked. And it's on the top of every image. So let's go ahead and fix that. So let me look at my notes here, why that's happening. Basically, tile overlay. Yeah, so let me go ahead and implement the next thing, because I think that's what's going to fix it. What we want to do next is, and this is why it's going to fix it, is that the tile overlay is at the top and we want it at the bottom. So we can add in another like column widget, but we don't want to do that. What we want to do is specify a custom height for our container. And so what that does, it's going to let us kind of fix the problem here. And also for the image banner, we want to pass in a custom height. And so we don't want it exactly 200, we want it 245 pixels high. So we haven't implemented that yet. But that's per the design. So per the design, each item here is 245 pixels high, but if you look at the detail screen, the height of this is only 200. So we want to implement it based on the mockups that we have. So let's go ahead and implement the ability to define a custom parameter for our image banner component. So to do that, I'm going to create a new member called final double height. Let's see here, and I'm going to make these not private anymore because I want to be able to refer to them. And so this is a new Dart construct. I mean, I've already covered the ability to specify optional parameters via the curly braces here, and also a default parameter here, so I can assign it a default parameter here. But also, when all of these are optional, as denoted by the curly braces, if one of those optionals is required, you can specify a special annotation. And we've already covered an annotation in Dart. That's basically anything that starts with the @ symbol here. So @override is an annotation. But you can also do it for constructor parameters. So I can say required, And that makes sure that when I use it, that a person always uses an asset path. And if they don't use height, then there's at least a default. So you're going to say height here, like that. And now we have to, it errors out because we have to update our kind of how we're going to pass it here. So going back to locations here, because we're using optional parameters denoted by those curly braces, we're going to have to refer to them by name. So, so if I say asset path here and also height here, it should fix the problem. And there you go. So the text is at the bottom. And yeah, that's it. So let's continue on here. That looks really cool. Now it's going to error out when I go to the details screen because I haven't updated it to use our new tile overlay widget. Right now it's not up to date. It has build errors here, right? See that? So let's go ahead and implement that. Okay, so hiding this ugly error, let's go to the location details screen and just update this. So let's see what I'm missing. I'm looking at my notes here. Okay, so we want to pass in we want to specify a name of my parameter. So asset path, that's why it's erroring out. And let's see if that works here. Cool, it works. What else? What we haven't done is implement the actual location tile. So right now we just have an image banner and we've added a bunch of text sections, and we did this in a previous lesson. So let's go and implement use our location tile. So update our imports. And then we can say here, so what we want to do is we have our image banner at the top, so that's cool. And then we have, what we want to do is add some padding from the main image here at the top. And let me open the mockup here. The reason why we want to add padding here is that for the, let's see, for every text section has some default vertical padding at the top and the bottom. So if we have like 10 different text sections, it's going to nicely lay out like that. But we want a little extra padding for this special widget. We want this extra padding here, and I've added that deliberately to the mockups to show you what we can do here to kind of solve that problem. We want that extra padding around this location tile widget here. And to add that extra padding, there's a special widget called the padding widget. So we're going to just say padding. And all that is like a glorified container widget, but it just makes it explicit that we're going to use some specific padding for this. So we're going to say edge insets symmetric, which we went over in the last episode. And we're going to add that extra padding, which is vertical padding of 20. And then it has a simple child. And now we can implement our location tile. So our location tile, we specify location, and we just pass in that location. Let's save it. And oh, we have this weird looking yellow here. That's because it overflows, and I'll talk about that in a sec. So, but now it has that extra pattern that we want. It's not like exactly to the mockup per se, but it's good enough right now. Let me make sure that, well, we'll fix that other padding issue in a second. Cool. So here's the deal. The reason why we have this yellow and black weird overflow error here is because this scaffold widget has a column widget, and if it overflows the screen, it's going to show that issue. So what we want to do is be able to scroll the screen if the content overflows. So what I'm going to have to do is use a special widget called single child scroll view. It's a scroll view with just one child, and that child is column. And so let me show you how that works. It's pretty simple. And there we go. It's the problem is fixed. So what that does, it lets us scroll up and down when the text is overflowing. So if I tap on Mount Fuji, I can scroll nicely here, really cool. And yeah, that's it. So it looks really good. Let me see if there's anything I missed. So that padding issue on the location tile is bothering me. So what I want to do is look at the default padding. You see the padding is a little less in this here than each text section here. So to fix that, I'm going to look at the padding of the text section. The text section, let me see if that's accurate. So yeah, the horizontal padding is 16. Cool. So that should be 16. And for the location tile, the padding for that, let's just see, it doesn't have a padding. So let's go back to the location detail screen. And location detail screen, we have the padding here. Let's just restart it, because sometimes when we add new constants in Dart, for any Flutter app, we have to completely stop and restart the app. And that's the reason for that is the reason why hot reload won't work is because a constant is defined at compile time. So if I have a constant here in my style.dart, all these constants, they're not necessarily going to be used. We can't use them immediately. They're not going to take effect immediately because the app needs to be recompiled, and that's not going to be covered by the hot reload. But the benefit of that is that they're compiled ahead of time, and that's the benefit of a constant, is that they're defined up front and they don't need to be dynamic. They're defined up front. So let's see if that fixed that. All right, so it didn't fix that, so let's just tweak it ourselves here. Padding, so we want to add some horizontal padding here. So horizontal, and so I'm going to add 4 pixels here, and yeah, that's pretty good. Cool, because the thing is, the location tile widget has its own, it doesn't really have any padding. But this location detail screen will need to give it some extra padding. So I basically made the padding the same, and rather than troubleshoot it with you, I think I'll leave it at that. I don't want to get into too much of this, but basically I hope you learned some basics about what we talked about, which is how to use theming in a better way, how to consolidate your style more, how to add it to app.dart to kind of be able to refer to each theme by name, how to use reusable components like the location tile component. This is a reusable component that we are able to customize. And we also went over optional parameters and how to make certain parameters required. And yeah, how to use the stack widget. So stack widget lets you stack widgets on top of each other. So until next time, thanks for watching.